Hi, and welcome to this week's Sunday sit-down video. If this is your first time, I am Jamey. I run a company called Stonemaier Games, and I love board games. And so my Sunday sit-down videos are ways for me to talk more in length about board games opposed to my other videos, which are kind of short and sweet about a specific mechanism in a specific game. One thing I wanted to share is that we reached 10,000 subscribers, I think yesterday. I didn't see exactly when it happened. But thank you for being, if you are one of those subscribers, thank you for being one of them. If you're not, and you enjoy this video or the other videos I make, feel free to subscribe or hit that little bell or hit that little bell next to the subscribe button. That'll ensure that you never miss one of these videos. You'll get a little email alert whenever I post a new video, which is usually 3 times a week. Anyway, today I'm going to talk about my favorite two-player games. And by this I mean the games that are either designed to play only with 2 players or that are just primarily played with 2 players. I'm not talking about games that play best with 2 players, but also play at other player counts. I'm talking about games that are designed for 2 players or are almost always played with 2 players. And there might be some debate over that. I'm open to that debate, but this is somewhat objective, I think, in terms of what a 2-player game is. I have talked about this on Instagram a few times this week. I'll post an Instagram link below. And on some other videos too on Facebook as well. And the people have shared a lot of different 2-player games that they love. And so this week I did try to play a few additional games that I hadn't played before. I think actually in the last week I've played 4 new to me 2-player games, and some of them might make my top 10 list. But I also acknowledge that there are a ton of games, and I will talk about these later in the video, that I have not played, 2-player games that I haven't played, that I'm very interested in and curious about, and I will mention them, and I will also post them, the names of them, in the comments or in the description below, so you can see the games that I haven't played in case I mention one or I don't mention one that you think that I should play. So I'd love to hear your thoughts after I'm done with this video. So let's get to it. Yeah, actually, I'll say my top 10 list. I'll say some quick things about each of the games, and then I'll talk about a few of the things that went into this decision. You'll notice that there are some games that aren't on this list that maybe should be, in your opinion. I respect that, but they aren't on my list for specific reasons. My number 10 game is the one that I played the most recently. A lot of people recommend that I play this, and this is Targi. Targi uses this grid mechanism system where you place workers on this grid and you get the cards where you place the workers and at the intersection of where your markers meet. So you can see blue here, blue is over here, and they intersect here. You get that card as well. So you get a lot of stuff. You get 5 things every time you take a turn in Targi, which feels really good, feels really powerful, or this is every round that you get them. And Targi just has a lot of stuff. I haven't done a video about Targi yet, but I really, really enjoyed my play of it. Well, 50,000 games sold. That's awesome. But one of my favorite mechanisms is that intersecting mechanism. I like that you have this interesting spatial choice throughout the round, and that the cards in the middle of the board are refreshed and randomized as you take them away. So you're constantly getting new cards in the middle of the board. The outer border remains the same. But yeah, really, really cool game. I really, really enjoyed my play of Targi. I look forward to playing it again. I would say the only reasons that it's this low on the list are that it took us about almost 2 hours to learn and play it. I think that's highly unusual. I think we could probably get it down to 45 minutes to an hour. The box does say an hour. And as you will see, most of the games on this list are shorter games, which is my preference for 2-player games. More about that in a minute. My number 9 game is a game that I really, really enjoy. I highly admire it. It's a beautiful game, and that is Fog of Love. I love romantic comedies as a movie genre, and Fog of Love is romantic comedy as a board game, as it says right on the box. It's a really, really cool game. It has some great mechanisms, but also some wonderful storytelling moments that emerge from the game, but are also built into the game. It's not relying on you to create these moments. These moments are built into the game, and it's about a relationship between you and another person. This is what the board looks like. You kind of have you're accumulating, or not accumulating, but you're acquiring different traits. You have these goals that you're trying to meet. It's not just a storytelling game. But I've played this game with 2 different people. One was The first time was interesting because two heterosexual males played it with each other as I think one of us played as a woman, one as a man, and it was very different. It was a little. I felt a little uncomfortable at times because it was so outside of my heteronormative experience. But I think that was a good thing. I think that it was good that I tried that. The other time was with a female friend of mine. A little more comfortable that time. We had it felt more natural because those are the types of relationships I've been in. But I enjoyed both for what it was, and I made good memories playing both times. So Fog of Love, my number 9. Number 8 is Stratego. And as you can tell, this is an old copy. This is my childhood copy of Stratego. I had a nice win streak of this game going when I was younger where I didn't lose for many years. I was pretty good at Stratego. I love that you... In Stratego, well, I don't know if you've ever seen this game, but the idea is that you set up your half of the board with all of your little pawns facing you, so you know what's on the pawns, but the opponent doesn't know what your pawns are. They know what your pawns are. And you're trying to capture the opponent's flag, which they can hide anywhere on their side of the board during setup. So there's this fairly lengthy setup process in Stratego, which I think is maybe the reason why it's lower down on the list, because it does have a bit of a learning curve. But really, Stratego, it's pretty easy to learn and just set up and play. Even with someone who doesn't know how to play, they can set up a pretty random side and still have a good experience with it. Many of the pawns do different things. Sometimes it's just the rank that matters. And I have really enjoyed this game throughout my life. And so that's why Stratego is number 8 on my list. Let's see what's next. Number 7 I don't have. Number 7 is also a very new to me game. This is Agricola, All Creatures Big and Small. My friend Jeff taught this to me at Design Day this past last weekend. And it was awesome. It was one of those games where it just felt good throughout. I think part of it is that I already know how to play Agricola, and so I already knew 95% of the mechanisms in the game. In Agricola, you have accumulating resources. So if no one takes an action spot one round, at the end of that round or the beginning of the next round, you accumulate, you add more resources to it. So these worker placement spots that aren't all that interesting become more and more interesting, and the timing is you're trying to decide, okay, when do I grab it versus when do I wait a little bit longer so that I accumulate more resources there. And it played so fast. Like I was really impressed. Like Agricola can take us 2 to 3 hours. This game took us 20 minutes. It was a filler game easily, which as you will see throughout this list is kind of a sweet spot for me. More shorter games as 2-player games. So that's number 7, Agricola, All Creatures Big and Small. The next one I also don't have because I have primarily played this game online, and that is Star Realms. Star Realms, if you have Steam on your computer, Star Realms has a really, really good app. I discovered it a few months ago, and I've really, really been enjoying it. Even more so, I would say, than the times I played Star Realms with a deck of cards, which is very rare for me for a board game. But I really like how the app reminds me of certain things that I might otherwise forget. But Star Realms is basically just a head-to-head. It's not a combat game. I mean, there is combat in the game, but you're trying to reduce your opponent's health to 0, and they are controlling a fleet of ships. You are controlling a fleet of ships, and so you're balancing every round. Am I going to deal damage to my opponent, or am I going to acquire new cards, or a mix of both of those things? One common theme you'll see here is that I don't always like dueling games where you're just fighting another player and reducing their health. There are a few exceptions to this. Star Realms is one of them, but I think it just works for Star Realms. It feels really good to knock away at your opponent's health throughout the game. It's like from the first turn, it feels like you are doing something because you are making progress against your opponent. So for that reason and many others, I really do enjoy Star Realms as a 2-player game. My number 5, this top 5 is really tough, I have to say. I mean, there is a separation here in my top 5 between the other 5 that I just mentioned. I'm going to give this one to Patchwork. Patchwork at times has been my favorite 2-player game and one of my favorite games, and it still is. I really, really enjoy playing Patchwork. It's one of these games that's super easy to play. There is an engine-building feel to it because you're acquiring more and more of these buttons that are essentially they're the currency of the game that you spend in addition to time. And that's the other thing. It uses time as a resource. In Patchwork, you are acquiring these little Tetris-like shapes, and you're putting them on your patchwork quilt, and you're spending time and those buttons to do so. every once in a while, you also acquire income of more buttons, and so that's why buttons is a key economy in Patchwork. Patchwork is, I don't know, it's just it feels good. It's so easy to teach. It's so easy to play. It feels good throughout. It's a challenging puzzle. It says right here on the box, it's a challenging puzzle. And it is by far my favorite of Uwe Rosenberg's games of this style, except for A Feast for Odin. So it's the simplest one, and then all the way up to Feast for Odin. The other three in the middle, I've actually only played 2 of them, so I can't speak to all of them, but they just haven't held up to the simplicity and elegance of Patchwork. I really, really enjoy Patchwork as a 2-player game. Okay. What is the next one? Sorry, I just got a text that is totally distracting to me while I'm doing this. Seven Wonders Duel is my number 4. Seven Wonders Duel. Again, this is a wonderful, wonderful, really, really special game that uses this really unique drafting mechanism, this pyramid draft, that I think has appeared in maybe 1 or 2 other games, but I haven't played them. So as I take a card, I don't know if you can see it there on the screen, but if I take this card, we reveal these next 2 cards, and they are available for you to buy. And on your turn, you must obtain a card. You may not necessarily play that card. You might do some other things with it, but you must take a card out of the display. So you take a card and then you reveal cards. And so you always had this choice, okay, am I going to take this card and reveal these new cards for this other player, make them accessible? Or am I going to take this one card that's already visible and make this other card available to you? So I really love the uncertainty in this tree as you play throughout Seven Wonders Duel. There are a lot of other cool mechanisms in this game. That's why it's one of the top-ranked games in the world, and that's why it's also my number 4 game. The next one, what is next? Number 3. This is a bit of a surprise to me, and I think it's an indication of how I like shorter games rather than longer games for 2-player games. Seven Wonders Duel runs about 45 minutes for me. Well, Jolly and Roger, a simpler game, can run about 20 minutes. And this has the I cut you choose mechanism that I love so much and that I've talked about on this channel before. It's almost purely I cut you choose. You choose, you draw some cards, you separate them, and they're crew that are going to go on one of, I believe it's 4 ships in the middle of the table. And you're trying to have control of those ships because the ships are worth money at the end of the game, but you're also, many of your crew members are worth money if you just stow them away under your treasure chest. And so you are, as you make your selection, so I cut into 2 piles, my opponent makes a selection, and so we're constantly battling back and forth about, do we control the ships, or are we stowing away some passengers, some crew members? It's just, it's a great game. I've really, really enjoyed this game, and I think it's out of print, unfortunately. But if you have access to it, I would highly recommend it. Down to number 2. Number 2 is also a game that I primarily play online. I usually play it when a new set comes out. And that is, and so I do have one little card here, that is Magic the Gathering. I've played this since I was maybe 13 years old, off and on throughout my years. And while there are shortcomings in the game design, mostly around mana and the collectible aspect of it, I just love the game. I think it's a really, really brilliantly designed game. It's beautifully illustrated. It's hard for me to say how complex the game is. I think it is probably incredibly complex. But because I know the game, it just feels pretty intuitive to me. And Magic Online makes it really, really easy to play. But I just, every time a new set comes out, I am just amazed by the array of mechanisms and unique abilities that they put in this game. I struggle as a designer to think of like 20 unique cards in a game. But in Magic, every set comes out with like 200 unique cards. It's incredible. I don't know how they do that. But I love the game. I particularly love drafting Magic. I really, really love drafting Magic. And I've started to, every time a new set comes out, I've started to host one draft with my friends so we can just play it and have that experience of opening packs in person, which does feel really awesome. So drafting Magic is my number 2 favorite 2-player game. My number 1, as many of you can guess, now that I haven't mentioned it, and that I've mentioned it many times on this video in the past, is indeed Hanamikoji. Hanamikoji is another 2-player I cut you choose game, and it has this push and pull aspect where you're trying to win the attention, the respect of geisha that are on the table. It's beautifully elegant. You only have 4 actions to play every round, but you must play all those actions. So your choice is which cards am I going to use with those actions, and at what time am I going to take those actions, which is just a wonderful, wonderful decision. I would love to find a way to, and I'll get more into this in a minute, I would love to find a way to expand this to higher player count, this system, because it's a wonderful, wonderful system. This is my #1 favorite 2-player game, Hanamikoji. Okay, so I have a lot of other short lists to mention here, but really in brief, as I kind of had mentioned here, my preference for 2-player games, and really the overarching theme here is that these are games that I'm really excited to play right now. There are other great 2-player games that I will mention in a second, of games that I have played, that I really respect, that I like, that I would play again, but I'm more excited to play these games again. I gravitate towards 2-player games that are shorter. Most of my gaming is with a bigger group. And so when I play 2-player games, it's either as a filler or it's just as kind of maybe a friend and I who lives in the area, maybe we just want to get together and play games for a little bit. But we don't want to make 2 or 3 hours out of it. We just want to play for 20, 30 minutes, maybe 45 at most. So I do prefer shorter games. Oftentimes with 2-player games, I am learning on the spot with that other player. So I like games with much shorter rule books, much easier rule books that we can just sit down and play with one another and learn this game together. So that's a major asset to have a short, clear rule book. For my preference, this isn't like me judging all 2-player games. This is just my preference. And I also prefer 2-player games mostly that aren't dueling games, that aren't head-to-head combat games. That seems to, I think Magic, because Magic is so popular, Magic is a great dueling game, I think it almost set the precedent for all other 2-player games, or many other 2-player games, where the only way many designers think about 2-player games is, I need to fight my opponent. I need to destroy my opponent. Which can be done well. Like I mentioned, Star Realms, I think it works so well as a deck building game because you are doing that. But there's so many, like all the other games on my list, other than Magic and Star Realms. I guess Stratego is kind of a dueling game. Yeah, it is. Okay, so 7 out of the 10 are not dueling games because there's so many other ways to do that, to have these interesting player interactions one-on-one without just fighting each other. Again, that's my personal preference. So here are the other 2-player games that I've played, but that did not make the list. And the first 2 were the most difficult because they were Fields of Arle and Star Wars Rebellion. I think these are brilliant games. I've had wonderful experiences playing both of them, wonderful memories from Star Wars Rebellion, wonderful Euro economic choices from Fields of Arle, but they got bumped off the list just a little bit because they're just so long. I don't see myself getting them to the table all that often. Fields of Arle also is now a 3-player game with the expansion, but I still think it's, like, out of the box, it is a 2-player game. I'll just list the other ones. Chess, Battle Line, Stronghold, Fantasy Football 2052, which will be on Kickstarter soon, Android Netrunner, Arkham Horror the Card Game, Twilight Struggle, Jaipur, Santorini, Onitama, Princess Jing, which I have. Princess Jing. The Rose King, Hive, A Few Acres of Snow, Shadows in Kyoto, and Ravens of Thri Sahashri. And I should mention Shadows of Kyoto. I really did enjoy this, but I would play Stratego before I played this, and this is like Stratego Light with some other unique mechanisms and a little less agency. But yeah, and some deduction. I like Shadows of Kyoto, but I'd rather play Stratego again. So those are all the games that I've played, but that did not make my top 10 list. And now, here are all the games, and I have one other topic after this. I know this is getting long, but one other topic after this. These are the list of 2-player games that I want to play because they have been recommended to me, and I haven't played them yet. And this is why I haven't mentioned them. The only one that I actually own is Cosmic Run. I'm Rapid Fire. I'm really looking forward to playing this one. The other games are Raptor, Odin's Ravens, Fox in the Forest, In Between, Morels. I'm going to write down one of these because I think Raptor is probably at the top of this list of games that I want to play. Crystal Clans, Longhorn, Keyforge. I have actually pre-ordered Keyforge. I just don't have it yet. Codenames Duet, Summoner Wars, Daxu, Mage Wars, Spirits of the Wild, Dark is the Night, Thunder and Lightning, Legend of the Five Rings, which I actually did play the original version of it a long, long time ago when I was like 14, 15. And I don't even know if we played correctly. So I didn't feel comfortable saying that I'd played that one. Fantasy Baseball 2052, Bottom of the Ninth, and Ashes Rise of the Phoenixborn. Yeah, those are the games that I haven't played that have been recommended to me. Finally, you might be wondering, and other people have asked me, why hasn't Stonemaier Games published a two-player only game, and would we ever consider publishing like a dual version of one of our games, or just a standalone two-player game? And the reason that we haven't is that my design and publishing philosophy for Stonemaier Games in particular, for our brand, is that we publish games that can be played as a couple or as a pair of friends, so that the games that can be played as two-player games, but that also can play in larger groups, ideally 5, 6, 7 players. That's our goal. I want games that can cover that breadth, so that when you buy a game, you get a huge amount of value out of it in terms of when you can play it as a couple or you can play it as a game night. And I try to design these games and develop these games so that we can really stand by that. So we really can say, yeah, you can have a great experience as a two-player game. You'll also have a great experience playing this game as a 5 or 6-player game. We do try to be honest on our boxes, though. With Between Two Cities and Between Two Castles, they are designed primarily for 3 to 7 players, not 2 players. But there is a tested, viable 2-player variant in both of those boxes. So on the boxes, we say 3 to 7 players with a 2-player variant. And Between Two Cities can even be played solo. So that's the main reason why I haven't published two-player games. However, I do acknowledge that it is a pretty clever publishing choice to publish a two-player game. They're easier to playtest because all you need is one other person to playtest, or 2 people who are willing to playtest. So much easier to playtest than a larger group. I think they're a little bit easier to market at times, even though the audience is limited. They cost less, and so you don't have to. You're just putting enough components in here for 2 players. You're not trying to span it up to 5 or 6 players like we do. So that it is a little bit easier to market these 2-player games in terms of pricing in particular. So I do see some pros. I might change my mind about this in the future. We will see. If we do, I think most likely it would be as a standalone game, a new game, not an offshoot of an existing game that we have. But we'll see. I can't say that for sure. Last, I have considered, there is one game that I played around with for a while. I haven't actually played it. This game is just in the brainstorming stage. And on multiple levels, I don't know if it would work. But the idea is that it is it's a collectible game of a component that is not already in any collectible game. It's not a card. It's not dice. It's something else that hasn't been collectible before. However, there are huge problems with collectible games in terms of publishing, from a publishing perspective, and again, it's a 2-player only game. So I don't know if that's something I want to spend a lot of time on at this point in my where I am as a designer in a company. But maybe it'll be an interesting challenge to focus on someday. We'll see. I don't know. That's my video. That's my top 10 favorite 2-player games at this moment. I am sure with all these games that I haven't played, I will need to do another one of these videos in the future, and I look forward to trying out any of these mini games that I've listed and that you might list in your top 10. So I'm very curious to hear your top 10. I'm curious to hear if any of these games that I've listed you would highly recommend that I seek out and play as soon as possible, or maybe at Geekway to the West next year. Or if you have games that I haven't even mentioned here that you think I should check out, I'd love to hear your recommendations for them as well. Those are my thoughts. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Any thoughts in relation to what I've said about 2-player games. I respect your opinion, and I respect it even if it is different than mine. And yeah, thanks for joining me today on this week's Sunday Sit Down. Take care.